Hello and welcome to Science for Bedtime. If your day felt a little too loud or your thoughts are still racing ahead of you, you're in the right place. This channel is made for slow science, gentle curiosity, and nights that end softly. And if these calm journeys help you unwind, feel free to subscribe. It's a quiet way to support the channel, and it helps more bedtime listeners find their way here too. Now settle in and let your breathing become easy and unforced. Imagine the words as a slow current you don't have to swim against, only float with. Tonight, we're going to drift beneath the surface and wander through the ocean's most soothing wonders, moving from glowing creatures to underwater mountains, from ancient shipwrecks to the silent chemistry of the deep. You don't need to remember every detail. You can simply listen and let the sea carry you. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, and yet it still feels like a place that belongs partly to dreams. Its surface can sparkle and dance, but beneath it is a world of pressure and darkness, of valleys and ridges, of life that survives without sunlight, and of histories that have been quietly resting for centuries. In some ways, it's the largest home life has ever built, and in other ways, it's Earth's oldest secret. If you think of history, you might picture stone ruins under open sky, broken columns, and dusty pottery. But there are more historical artifacts underwater than on land, because for thousands of years, ships have sunk, ports have slipped beneath rising seas, and coastlines have changed shape. In cold, low-oxygen water, wood and metal can last longer than you'd expect, preserved by stable temperatures and slow decay, like time itself is moving at a gentler pace. Somewhere on the seafloor, an ancient ship can rest as if it simply decided to stop traveling, its cargo still tucked away in darkness. Archaeologists now use sonar, mapping tools, and underwater robots to find these quiet time capsules, revealing chapters of human story that have been hidden in saltwater silence. It's a comforting thought in a way that the ocean remembers. And the ocean doesn't only remember human history, it holds biological puzzles so strange they sound like myths until you see the evidence. There is a small jellyfish called Turritopsis dohrnii, often nicknamed the immortal jellyfish, because it can reset its life cycle under stress, transforming its cells back toward an earlier stage, a process known as transdifferentiation. It doesn't make it invincible, but it does make aging feel less like a straight line and more like a loop. Even identity can be flexible beneath the waves. Some fish change sex as they mature, in a phenomenon called sequential hermaphroditism, a strategy that helps populations stay balanced when social structures shift. Clownfish, like Amphiprion ocellaris, begin life male, and if the dominant female disappears, the largest male can become female, as if the group quietly reshapes itself to keep going. While these stories unfold in living tissue, the sea floor itself is also alive with motion, just slower than we notice. The biggest mountain ranges on Earth are underwater because the mid-ocean ridges form a chain that circles the globe for about 65,000 kilometers, where tectonic plates pull apart and new crust is born. These ridges shape currents, habitats, and even the long-term chemistry of the sea, as if the planet is breathing through its own skin. And in the colder coastal shallows, there are forests that grow not in air, but in water. Giant kelp, Macrocystis pyrifera, can grow astonishingly fast, sometimes more than a meter in a single day, reaching upward like a living ladder of green. Kelp forests become shelter and nursery space for countless species, and they also help absorb carbon, quietly supporting the planet while swaying with the tides. The ocean even holds treasure we will likely never touch. There is gold dissolved in seawater, an enormous amount spread so thin it can't be extracted economically with today's methods. It drifts in invisibly small concentrations, carried in rivers, released near hydrothermal vents, and stirred through deep currents, like a wealth that exists only as an idea, a shimmer you can't quite grasp. And then there is depth, the kind of depth that makes the mind grow still. The deepest point in the ocean, the Challenger, deep in the Mariana Trench, reaches nearly 11 kilometers down. Mount Everest rises about 8.8 kilometers above sea level, so if you placed Everest into that trench, its peak would still be more than a kilometer underwater, pressed beneath a weight of pressure that exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. It's almost soothing to imagine that pressure, not as something crushing, but as something that holds the deep in perfect stillness. And despite the darkness, life survives there, adapted to extremes that would feel impossible on land. Some of the ocean's most surprising discoveries have been made in places we once assumed were nearly empty. Even now, more than 80% of the ocean remains unexplored and unmapped. It's one of Earth's last great frontiers, not because it's far away, but because it's hard to reach and harder to study, with cold, pressure, and darkness resisting our curiosity. Remote vehicles and autonomous drones have begun to peel back the unknown, and with each expedition, new species and new landscapes appear like shapes emerging from fog. In the ocean, intelligence can look gentle too. Sea otters in Hydrolutris use rocks as tools, carrying stones to crack open shellfish like clams and mussels, sometimes using their own chests as an anvil as they float. Tool use is rare in the animal kingdom, and among sea otters it can be learned, practiced, and even passed from mother to pup, a small culture drifting on the surface. And in terms of biodiversity, the ocean likely holds more species than the land does, from microscopic plankton to immense whales. Coral reefs built by tiny coral polyps cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, but support an astonishing share of marine life, often estimated around a quarter of marine species. They are sometimes called rainforests of the sea, not because they look alike, but because they hum with layered relationships. Corals also remind us that life is often cooperative. Many reef-building corals rely on symbiotic algae called symbiodiniaceae, living inside their tissues and feeding them energy from photosynthesis. When water warms too much or pollution stresses the system, corals can expel these algae, leading to bleaching, a pale warning that the relationship is strained. Underwater volcanoes add another kind of wonder, building new crust and reshaping the landscape with slow eruptions that cool into rock. Near some volcanic regions, hydrothermal vents release superheated, mineral-rich water, and around these vents, life thrives without sunlight. Instead of photosynthesis, microbes perform chemosynthesis, using chemicals like hydrogen sulfide to build energy, forming the base of entire ecosystems that feel almost alien, yet entirely real. Above those depths, the ocean moves heat around the planet with a vast, slow current system called thermohaline circulation. Warm, salty water travels toward the poles, cools, becomes denser, and sinks, then flows back through deep pathways like a global conveyor belt. This circulation helps regulate climate, and even small shifts in it can ripple outward into weather patterns and ecosystems, reminding us how connected everything is. In the deep darkness, many creatures make their own light. Bioluminescence is common in the ocean, created by chemical reactions inside living bodies, producing glows, pulses, and shimmering signals. An anglerfish, in the group Lophiiformes, can use a glowing lure to draw prey closer, while other animals use light to communicate, camouflage, or confuse predators, turning the abyss into a quiet constellation. And then, as if to balance the tiny lights, the ocean also holds the largest animal ever known to exist. The blue whale, Balanoptera musculus, can reach around 30 meters in length and weigh as much as 200 tons, living on tiny krill, often Euphausia superba in the Southern Ocean. Its heart can be as large as a small car, and its calls can travel across vast distances underwater, a low song moving through the planet's biggest habitat. Salinity itself changes from place to place, shaped by evaporation, rainfall, rivers, and ice. The Red Sea is famously salty due to high evaporation and limited freshwater input, while places like the Baltic Sea are less salty because so much river water flows in. These differences affect density, currents, and where certain species can thrive, as if the ocean has invisible borders drawn in chemistry. Some reefs are ancient, growing for thousands of years, adding layer upon layer of calcium carbonate the way time adds quiet weight to memory. The Great Barrier Reef stretches along Australia for over 2,000 kilometers, a living structure visible even from space, built by countless small lives working together over long spans of time. It's both delicate and immense, and it reminds us that the ocean's beauty often depends on balance. And when you think of the ocean as a place, it helps to remember that the deep sea is the largest habitat on Earth by volume. Below about 200 meters, sunlight fades and a colder, darker world begins, holding most of the ocean's water and much of its mystery. In that darkness, there are plains so flat they're among the smoothest surfaces on the planet, formed by fine sediments, settling for millions of years like dust in a quiet room. In the deep, where the light thins and finally disappears, time feels different. The ocean doesn't rush. It repeats. It circulates. It carries small things across long distances, and it holds large things in place for ages. And if your thoughts are still moving too quickly, you can let them move like this too, slower, softer, with less urgency. As if they're being gently pulled by a tide you don't need to fight. Just below the sunlit surface, there is a boundary that seems almost too small to matter, and yet it matters immensely. The surface microlayer is only a thin skin of water, sometimes measured in millimeters. Where the ocean meets the air, it hosts specialized microorganisms, collects oils and particles, and plays a role in gas exchange between sea and sky. It's like the ocean's whispering edge, the place where oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water vapor trade places with the atmosphere. And still close to the surface, there is another strange community called the Neuston, organisms that live at or near that boundary line, drifting where water and air touch. Tiny larvae, floating snails, delicate jellyfish forms, and microscopic life all share this thin layer, rising and falling with each wave. It's a reminder that even the ocean's smallest spaces can be full of living complexity. Then, as you drift deeper, the light changes its character. At around 200 meters, the bright world begins to dim, and you enter the mesopelagic zone, often called the twilight zone. Here, there is still faint light, not enough for photosynthesis, but enough to cast a soft blue haze. Many animals here have enormous eyes, tuned to detect the last traces of daylight, and many produce their own light as well, turning the dimness into a quiet, moving constellation. In that twilight, the ocean's daily rhythm becomes visible in a way most people never see. Countless animals migrate up and down every day in what's called diel vertical migration, rising toward the surface at night and sinking back down during the day, one of the largest mass movements of life on the planet. It happens silently, like a living tide, driven by hunger, safety, and the shifting presence of light. And while life moves, the ocean also reigns. Not water, but food. Marine snow is the slow, constant fall of organic material from the surface toward the depths. Dead plankton, tiny fragments of algae, fecal pellets, and drifting particles sink downward in a steady shower. To deep-sea creatures, this is a vital supply line, a soft snowfall that connects the bright world above to the dark world below, carrying carbon into the abyss, where it can be stored for centuries. Some of the ocean's most productive places aren't where the water is warmest or calmest, but where the sea turns itself inside out. Upwelling brings deep, cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface, feeding phytoplankton blooms that fuel entire food webs. These regions, like those off California or Peru, can support some of the world's richest fisheries because nutrients rise into the light and life multiplies in response. And it's those tiny drifting plants, phytoplankton, that quietly shape your breath right now. The ocean produces more than half of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere, largely through photosynthesis by phytoplankton. Forests matter deeply, but the sea is also a vast green engine, not in trees but in microscopic cells, turning sunlight into oxygen over and over again, hour after hour. Phytoplankton also help regulate climate by drawing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. The ocean absorbs around 30% of human-produced carbon dioxide, acting as a major carbon sink. But there is a cost to that service. As carbon dioxide dissolves into seawater, it changes ocean chemistry, leading to ocean acidification, which makes it harder for many organisms to build shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate. You can imagine this change as subtle but persistent, like a slow shift in a melody. Clams, oysters, certain plankton, and reef-building corals all rely on calcium carbonate structures. As acidity rises, those structures can weaken, growth can slow, and entire ecosystems can feel the strain. It's one of the reasons scientists study not only what the ocean holds, but what the ocean is becoming. And even when the chemistry is stable, the ocean is never truly still. Currents move like giant conveyor belts, distributing heat and shaping climates far away from their origin. The Gulf Stream, for example, carries warmth across the Atlantic, helping keep parts of Western Europe milder than other regions at similar latitudes. These flows are the ocean's slow architecture, holding weather patterns in place, shifting them when the currents shift. Within those currents, smaller storms form beneath the surface. Ocean eddies are swirling masses of water, sometimes tens or hundreds of kilometers wide, spinning for weeks or months. They trap nutrients, concentrate plankton, and create localized hotspots of productivity where fish, seabirds, and marine mammals gather to feed. They are like temporary islands of abundance, turning motion into nourishment. Some of the ocean's most dramatic forces are not seen at the surface at all. Underwater canyons cut through continental shelves, some deeper and longer than famous land canyons. They funnel sediments, guide currents, and create habitats along steep walls and complex topography. Many remain poorly explored, not because they are empty, but because they are difficult to reach and harder to map. Farther down, brine pools create another kind of hidden geography. These are underwater lakes on the seafloor, where water is so salty and dense that it settles into depressions and doesn't mix easily with surrounding seawater. They can look like shimmering ponds, and they can be harsh environments, yet they still host specialized organisms adapted to their chemistry, living at the edge of what feels possible. The ocean also holds life that senses the world in ways we don't. Some sharks detect the faint electrical fields produced by other animals using organs called ampullae of Lorenzini. This electroreception helps them locate prey hidden beneath sand or in murky water, sensing muscle movements as tiny signals in the sea. It's hunting by electricity, quiet and precise. Other animals navigate by invisible maps. Sea turtles, like Caretta caretta, and many migratory species use Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves across vast distances. Magnetoreception allows them to travel across featureless water and still find nesting beaches or feeding grounds, guided by subtle variations in the planet's field like a natural compass. Sound, too, is a major language in the ocean because water carries it efficiently. Whale songs and calls can travel extraordinary distances through seawater, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of kilometers depending on conditions. For whales, sound becomes a way of staying connected in a world where visibility fades quickly with depth and distance. And among whales, one species carries a remarkable weight of biology. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, has the largest brain by mass of any animal. It dives deep, sometimes over 2,000 meters, and uses echolocation clicks to hunt squid in darkness. Its life is social, vocal, and structured, reminding us that the ocean holds not only vastness, but minds shaped by that vastness. Some creatures in the sea live on timescales that feel almost geological. The Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus, is one of the longest living vertebrates known, with lifespan estimates that can exceed 2 centuries. It moves slowly through cold northern waters, its metabolism unhurried, its life unfolding in a patient rhythm that feels almost like the ocean itself. And then there are the builders, the quiet engineers. Sea cucumbers crawl along the seafloor, feeding on detritus and recycling nutrients, breaking down organic material and enriching sediments. In many habitats, they help oxygenate the seafloor, supporting microbial communities and keeping the benthic ecosystem from becoming clogged with decay. They may look simple, but their work is essential. Even corals in their stillness keep time. Coral skeletons grow in layers, and those layers can record past ocean conditions like a natural archive. Scientists analyze coral cores the way they analyze tree rings, reading clues about temperature, chemistry, and even events like El Niño across years and decades, sometimes much longer, as if the reef itself is remembering. And above all these systems, the ocean's surface and temperature patterns can ripple outward into weather on land. Warm anomalies, like the phenomenon nicknamed the blob in the Pacific, have been linked with shifts in marine ecosystems and weather patterns along coasts. It's another reminder that the sea and the sky are not separate worlds. They're one coupled system, exchanging heat, moisture, and momentum in slow, powerful loops. If your mind begins to drift at any point, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to hold every fact. You can let them pass like bubbles rising, like light wavering through water. The ocean does not ask you to be sharp. It asks you to be present, and even that can soften into rest. As the ocean deepens, the sense of scale quietly expands, distances stretch, time loosens its grip. And the farther you drift, the more the sea begins to feel less like a place and more like a process, something constantly moving, mixing, and reshaping itself without pause or intention. Far from shore, the ocean's surface may look empty, but it is anything but. It's home to drifting communities of life so small they often go unnoticed. Phytoplankton bloom and fade with the seasons, sometimes forming vast green and turquoise swirls visible from space. These blooms follow light, nutrients, and temperature, responding to subtle changes in currents and wind. They rise quickly, feed countless organisms, and then sink back into the ocean's depths, becoming part of the slow carbon cycle that ties surface to seafloor. And when they sink, they do not fall into silence. Their descent feeds entire ecosystems that exist without sunlight. In the deep sea, where darkness is constant and pressure immense, life adapts in astonishing ways. Bodies become soft and flexible, bones thin, muscles conserve energy. Many creatures here glow faintly, producing their own light through bioluminescence, not as decoration, but as survival. Bioluminescence appears again and again in the deep, like a quiet language written in flashes and pulses. Some animals use light to lure prey closer. Others use it to confuse predators, releasing clouds of glowing particles and vanishing into the dark. Some match the faint light from above, erasing their silhouette from below in a strategy known as counter-illumination. In a place without color, light becomes shape, signal, and disguise all at once. And even here, far from the surface, the ocean remembers motion. Tectonic plates shift slowly beneath the seafloor, creating mid-ocean ridges that circle the planet like hidden seams. These ridges are the longest mountain chains on Earth, though most of them are submerged beneath kilometers of water. Along these ridges, new crust forms as magma rises, cools, and spreads, renewing the ocean floor grain by grain. Where volcanic activity meets seawater, hydrothermal vents appear. These are places where superheated, mineral-rich water pours from cracks in the crust, creating plumes that rise like underwater smoke. Around these vents, entire ecosystems flourish without sunlight. Bacteria use chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide to produce energy through chemosynthesis, forming the base of food webs that support giant tube worms, clams, shrimp, and other creatures found nowhere else. These vent communities remind us that life does not depend on light alone. It depends on energy, and energy can come from many sources. The ocean holds more than one way to be alive. And then there is the deep sea itself, the largest habitat on Earth by volume. Everything below about 200 meters makes up more than 90% of the ocean's living space. Yet we have explored only a small fraction of it. Much of this world remains unmapped, unseen, known only through brief glimpses from submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. Even so, patterns emerge. The deep sea is not uniform. There are plains and trenches, ridges and valleys, each shaping how water flows and how life settles. Abyssal plains stretch across vast areas, incredibly flat and calm, formed by fine sediments settling over millions of years. In contrast, trenches plunge sharply downward, creating some of the most extreme environments on the planet. The Mariana Trench, for example, reaches nearly 11 kilometers below sea level. At its deepest point, the pressure is more than 1,000 times that at the surface. And yet, life exists even there. Tiny crustaceans, worms, and microbes survive under conditions that would instantly crush most organisms. Their cells are adapted to pressure. Their enzymes function where others would fail. Life, once again, finds a way to persist. And while depth brings darkness, the ocean also brings rhythm. Tides rise and fall with the pull of the moon, shaping coastlines and influencing the behavior of countless species. Many marine animals time their reproduction to tidal cycles, releasing eggs and sperm during specific phases of the moon when conditions are most favorable. Coral spawning, for instance, often occurs simultaneously across entire reefs, turning the water into a drifting cloud of life, synchronized by lunar light and temperature. These rhythms extend beyond reproduction. Mangrove forests, growing where land meets sea, pulse with the tides. Their tangled roots, slow waves, trap sediments, and provide nurseries for fish and invertebrates. Mangroves are also powerful carbon sinks, storing large amounts of carbon in their wood and soil, often more efficiently than terrestrial forests. Quietly, they protect coastlines and climate at the same time. Nearby, seagrass meadows sway with currents, forming underwater fields that support turtles, fish, and countless small creatures. Like mangroves, seagrasses store large amounts of carbon, locking it away in sediments for long periods. These blue carbon ecosystems work slowly, steadily, and largely unnoticed, shaping the chemistry of the planet. And then there are the travelers. Fish that cross boundaries between saltwater and freshwater, like salmon, adjusting their internal chemistry as they move between worlds. Birds that skim wave crests for thousands of kilometers, riding wind and current with minimal effort. Whales that migrate between feeding and breeding grounds, guided by memory, sound, and the geometry of the Earth itself. Some animals navigate not by sight or sound, but by sensing electric fields. Electric fish generate weak electrical signals, creating a kind of living radar that helps them perceive their surroundings in murky water. Others, like electric eels, use powerful discharges to stun prey or defend themselves. In the ocean, perception takes many forms, each tuned to a specific way of life. And even waste becomes part of the cycle. Sea cucumbers recycle organic debris on the seafloor. Bacteria break down dead matter, releasing nutrients back into the system. Viruses, the most abundant biological entities in the ocean, infect microbes and regulate populations, influencing carbon cycling on a massive scale. Though invisible, these processes shape the health and balance of marine ecosystems every moment. As the ocean absorbs human influence, its systems respond. Microplastics now drift from surface to seafloor, entering food webs at every level. Tiny fragments are consumed by plankton, then passed upward to fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. Scientists study these pathways carefully, not to overwhelm, but to understand how interconnected everything truly is. And even here, adaptation continues. Some bacteria have evolved the ability to break down certain plastics, offering glimpses of possible future solutions. The ocean is resilient but not limitless. Its strength lies in balance, in cycles that function best when pressures remain within certain bounds. You don't need to hold all of this in your mind. You can let it wash through you gently, like waves smoothing a shoreline. Facts can blur, images can soften. The ocean doesn't demand attention, it allows drifting. And as your breathing slows, you might imagine floating somewhere between surface and depth, suspended in cool, dark water, where sound is distant and light is faint. Around you, currents move without effort. Life continues without urgency. In this vastness, there is no rush. The ocean has been here for billions of years. It will keep circulating, glowing, growing, and dissolving long after individual moments pass. And for now, you are free to rest within that continuity, letting your thoughts settle like sediment, layer by layer, until only calm remains. As the journey continues, the ocean seems to grow even quieter, as if the farther you drift, the more the noise of the surface fades away. Sound travels differently here. It moves faster and farther in water than in air, carrying whale songs across entire ocean basins, echoing softly through the dark like distant memories. These low, resonant calls are not rushed. They linger, overlap, and dissolve, forming one of the slowest conversations on Earth. In these depths, movement becomes economical. Many deep-sea animals conserve energy by drifting, waiting, responding only when necessary. Some fish have soft, gelatinous bodies that require little effort to stay afloat. Others have slow metabolisms, allowing them to survive long periods between meals. In a place where food is scarce, patience becomes a strategy. Above them, the ocean is never still. Currents weave through the water like invisible rivers, some warm, some cold, all interconnected. The thermohaline circulation moves slowly but powerfully, driven by differences in temperature and salinity. Warm surface water travels toward the poles, cools, sinks, and then flows back toward the equator along the deep ocean floor. This global conveyor belt takes centuries to complete a full cycle, quietly redistributing heat and nutrients around the planet. Because of these currents, distant places are connected in subtle ways. A change in one region can echo far away. Nutrients carried upward through upwelling zones fuel rich fisheries. Cold water rising from the depths brings life to the surface, feeding plankton blooms that support entire food webs. These areas become gathering points for fish, seabirds, and marine mammals, all drawn to places where the ocean briefly reveals its abundance. Along coastlines, waves arrive with stories from far away. Swells generated by storms thousands of kilometers distant roll steadily toward shore, carrying energy across entire oceans. By the time they break on beaches, the storm that created them may be long gone. The ocean remembers motion, holding on to it and releasing it slowly. At night, in certain coastal waters, the sea itself begins to glow. Bioluminescent algae light up with every movement, tracing footsteps, boat wakes, and breaking waves in soft blue-green light. This phenomenon, often called sea sparkle, turns the shoreline into a quiet display of living light. Each glow is a chemical reaction, brief and gentle, a reminder that even darkness in the ocean is rarely complete. In warmer waters, coral reefs rise like underwater cities. Built slowly by tiny coral polyps, these structures grow millimeter by millimeter, year after year. Though reefs cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, They support nearly a quarter of all marine species. Fish weave through branching corals. Crustaceans hide in crevices. Algae and sponges share space in delicate balance. Everything is connected, each life shaping the space for another. Some reefs have been growing for thousands of years, recording changes in climate within their skeletons. Like tree rings, coral layers store information about water temperature and chemistry from long ago. Scientists read these layers to understand past oceans, tracing patterns of warming, cooling, and change across centuries. The open ocean stretches endlessly beyond reefs. Here, life often appears sparse, but it is finely tuned. Many animals migrate vertically each day in what is known as the largest movement of biomass on Earth. As night falls, countless creatures rise from the deep toward the surface to feed under the cover of darkness. Before dawn, they sink back down again, avoiding predators and sunlight. This daily rhythm moves nutrients through the water column, linking surface and depth in a slow, repeating dance. Some creatures carry pieces of the ocean with them. Sea turtles travel vast distances guided by Earth's magnetic field, returning years later to the same beaches where they were born. Sharks sense faint electrical signals from hidden prey. Squid propel themselves with bursts of jet-powered motion, then drift again in silence. Each adaptation is a response to a specific challenge, refined over millions of years. And even the smallest life plays a role. Microscopic viruses drift everywhere, shaping populations of bacteria and plankton. When these microbes die, they release nutrients back into the water, fueling new growth. Nothing is wasted. Everything cycles. The ocean also holds reminders of human presence. Sunken ships rest quietly on the seafloor, slowly becoming artificial reefs. Fish shelter among rusted beams, corals attached to forgotten hulls. Over time, even objects made by humans are folded back into marine systems, transformed by salt, pressure, and life. As climate and chemistry shift, the ocean adjusts, but not without cost. Warmer waters change migration routes, acidification alters shell formation, ice melts, currents shift, and ecosystems respond. Scientists watch these changes carefully, listening to what the ocean is telling us, not with urgency here, but with attention. You don't need to analyze any of this now. You can let it drift past like passing light seen from a slow-moving boat at night. The details can soften, the facts can blur into atmosphere. What remains is the feeling of vastness, of continuity, of a world that moves on timescales far longer than a single night. Imagine yourself floating gently, supported by water, carried by a slow current that requires no effort. Above you, the surface shimmers faintly. Below you, darkness stretches calmly, not empty, but alive in quiet ways. Your breathing finds its own rhythm, steady and unforced. The ocean does not hurry, and neither do you. Tides rise and fall, currents circle the globe. Glows, feeds, rests, and repeats. And as these patterns continue, you can allow sleep to arrive naturally, the way night settles over the sea. Nothing needs to be concluded, nothing needs to be remembered. The ocean will keep its stories, and you can rest, knowing that beneath the surface the world is still moving gently, patiently, endlessly. And for now, that is enough. As the ocean continues its endless motion, you may notice how little effort it takes now to simply listen. The facts no longer arrive as individual ideas, but as a steady current, carrying you gently forward. Just like the sea itself, nothing here needs to hurry, and nothing needs to reach a destination. Far below the surface, the deep ocean remains calm and constant. Temperatures barely change, light never arrives, life moves slowly, conserving energy, waiting patiently. Creatures here do not rush, they drift. They respond only when needed. In this stillness, there is stability, a quiet rhythm that has existed for millions of years. Above, Tides continue to rise and fall, guided by the distant pull of the moon. Waves cross entire oceans, carrying the memory of storms long past. Currents circulate heat and nutrients, connecting distant shores without ever revealing their paths. Everything flows even when it appears still. The ocean does not separate movement from rest. It understands that both are part of the same cycle. Growth follows calm. Activity fades into stillness, and stillness prepares the way for renewal. You may imagine yourself floating effortlessly now, supported completely with no need to swim or steer. The water holds you, the current carries you. Your breathing matches the slow rhythm around you, steady and unforced, each breath arriving and leaving without thought. Thoughts, if they appear, can drift away just as easily. There is no need to follow them. Like bubbles rising toward the surface, they can pass through awareness and disappear, leaving the water clear again. Somewhere below, deep sea creatures glow faintly in the dark, their light brief and soft. Somewhere above, plankton continues its quiet work, producing oxygen, supporting life, shaping the planet without ever being seen. Somewhere along a distant coast, waves break gently, again and again, unchanged by time. The ocean holds all of this at once, without strain, and for this moment, you can rest within that same sense of spaciousness. Nothing needs to be solved, nothing needs to be remembered. The ocean keeps its knowledge in motion just as your body knows how to rest without instruction. As sleep draws closer, you can allow yourself to sink gently into it, the way light fades below the surface, gradually, without effort. Awareness softens, muscles relax. The world becomes quieter. The ocean will continue long after this moment. Currents will keep moving. Life will keep adapting. And when morning comes, it will still be there, vast and quietly alive. For now, it is enough to rest. Sleep well, and let the calm of the ocean carry you gently through the night.